everyone, welcome. It's Luna, and today I want to do a little tutorial for you on how to use the paste form special tool in Live2D. And this is a really useful tool that I've discovered recently that is going to enable you to reflect things specifically on corners. So for example, if you have, an angle X and an angle Y sort of shape like this with your corners, you're going to be able to copy and paste forms from one corner to another, which is not something you can super easily do using other methods in Live2D, but you can use it doing this. And it also is going to enable you to reflect your left and right pieces without having to copy and paste your whole, say you have a left eye fully rigged and then you just copy and paste it all over to the other side. You can do it that way, but you can also do it this way. So I'm going to show you some thingies using this paste form special, which we're going to find up here in the top modeling menu in Live2D, and you go down to edit form and then options for paste form special. I'm currently using the latest version of Live2D, which is 5.2.02. I think this might be a new feature, so if you have an older version, you might not have this, and if you're using the free version, you might not be able to do this. So this is the latest paid version, just wanted to add that disclaimer here. But so we have this dialog that is options for paste form special, and the important menus that we're gonna be looking at here today are the artmesh menu and the warp deformer menu. For setting up your deformers or artmesh for using this method, there's nothing super special about it except that I would suggest wherever you can, put your work into warp deformers instead of rigging on the mesh directly. Especially if you want to use this method, you might want to be particularly cautious about rigging on your art mesh directly if you have a single piece such as a face or like the middle part of this nose here. You're gonna want to put those into warp deformers, and hopefully you're doing that anyway as, best practices. You're using warp deformers and hierarchies where you can, but there's some weird stuff that can happen with art meshes in this, using this method, and so I just wanted to note that before you get too deep into the weeds, and I'll show you what happens in a little bit. But yeah, so this tutorial is assuming that you have, all your pieces meshed and put into even just basic hierarchies, as I have done here, and that you have keyed those warp deformers to your parameters that you are working with. You must excuse my sample model as well. Her name is Muna. It stands for Mini Luna, and also I like the band Muna, so there you go. She's not the most beautiful, but she's just for the sake of the tutorial, so there we go. So she is rigged on the angle X and angle Y, and then I, for the purposes of the tutorial, have synchronized her corners. So let's get into one of the ways that this method can be helpful, specifically for reflecting your corners. So hopefully you already know, if you have basic rigging experience, that for certain pieces, when you're working, especially with things like angle X, when you are working with certain pieces, you can use the reflect motion option, which is in the parameters menu, and you go to reflect motion here. And that is going to work, for example, if you have your facial deformer, you can copy it to the other side using reflect motion. It is for single symmetrical pieces for the most part. So if you have your warp deformer that has your face in it, you're gonna use reflect motion. Probably that's the easiest thing to do. For the mouth, probably you could do this. If you had a warp deformer, as I do, that encompasses the entire shape of the nose, you can use reflect motion on that. But what you can't use reflect motion for is the things like brows and eyes that have left and right parts, because what will happen, and I'm gonna try not to mess anything up too horribly here, but what will happen if you do that is if you reflect motion on something like an eye, for example, you'll see that it gets squished into the shape that it is on the other side, but on account of how faces work, that's not actually what we want it to look like. What we actually want it to look like is what the right eye looks like when she's looking to the left. And so this is a situation where you would use your paste form special. And you can also do this on the diagonal. So I'm going to use it here for looking up and to the left. You can see that I've synchronized my corners. This is sort of edited by me. So I synchronized my corners. Originally, it looked like this and then this, which is pretty god awful, right? I'm sure that you have probably had a similar experience unless you use a totally different method. But when you synchronize corners, even if you're up, down, left, right look good, sometimes the corners just get super weird. And so what I've done is I've gone in, I've edited a little bit so she doesn't look like a spooky, scary creature. And so we'll be able to see what it looks like when we copy and paste the forms over from one corner to the other. But you can also do this, you know, on the X parameter, and this works in lots of different use cases, but for now I'm going to show it to you with the looking up and to the right and left. All right, we're almost there to the actual good stuff, I promise. Hopefully I've remembered to put chapters in here for people who are like me, who skipped to the middle of the tutorial to find out what's going on. Something to note before we get started with the actual copying and pasting of forms is that for this paste form special window that you can see in the corner here, you are going to want to leave that open while you are working on this. You'll note this sort of blurb at the bottom that says these options are active when dialog is open, and that doesn't mean only when the dialog is open. This method does not work when you close this window, so if you X out of it, don't be surprised if it doesn't work, and you can just open the window again and it should work, but you know, just to know. You want to make sure that, so opacity, multiply color, screen color, these don't matter too much for what we're doing. I think you can probably infer what these mean, but for the purposes of this tutorial, the most important thing is that you have vertices info checked and invert coordinates checked, because that's going to be what lets us do symmetry. Probably you're going to be reflecting things along the center axis of the, so the vertical center axis. Probably for most people, auto setting to center of canvas is going to be fine for you, especially if you drew your model or have a model drawn for you that is symmetrical. You know, you probably drew it along a center symmetry line, and if that symmetry line is not the center of the canvas, you might have to adjust using a manual setting and then, you know, type the pixel number of where the center of your canvas is. But I suspect that for most people, the vertical axis and auto center of canvas is going to be just fine, but adjust as necessary. And the other thing is make sure that flip the front and back side is checked. I'll show you what happens if we don't have it checked off, and it gets pretty weird. Check that. Everything checked and all that good stuff. All right, let's get into the exciting part, which is the copying and pasting. There are two slightly different methods based on whether you are copying and pasting a single piece or a left and right piece, or, you know, pieces, and we'll go over that. So let's first start with a single symmetrical piece. Let's select our face angle XY. We're gonna have that warp deformer selected that we want to be copying and pasting the shape of. I usually just right click on the keyform or keyframe that we want to copy the shape of. And so for me, I'm doing the top corner and looking to her left. So we have the warp deformer selected, we have the parameter selected, and now we're going to copy this form. And there's two ways to do this. One, you can go the hard way into modeling, edit form, and copy form, or you can use a shortcut, which I believe defaults to Control-Shift-C. If you have a different shortcut set for this, if you don't know it, it should be here. next to copy form in this menu. It should show what the shortcut is. I'm gonna do it using my keyboard. So I'm gonna Control-Shift-C this form, and then keep the warp deformer selected and right click on your parameter keyframe that is on the opposite side, the side that you want to reflect to. So for me, it's going to be the top and looking to her right. And then you're going to paste. And again, we go into modeling, edit form, and paste form. Or we can see that the shortcut is Control-Shift-V. And voila, it adjusts perfectly well. And you can see it, I might want to adjust some of the things that are going on, but it reflected properly, which is the important part for this tutorial. And it really is as easy as that. And a very similar principle goes for if you are reflecting left and right pieces with sort of one major but pretty easy to figure out difference. Let's go back to the top and looking to the left, and let's, I'm actually going to show you, I think I'm going to show you two things. Now, again, I can't close this really annoying window, so I'm just going to shove it over here. It doesn't really matter if you can see it or not, it just has to be open. So yeah, I'm going to show you two things, I think, in this next part. We are going to reflect the eyes on the diagonal, because they're looking pretty funky. So let's do that. We're going to select all of the eye parts that are rigged to the top corner. So in a sense, I'm both showing you how you can do this, doing a left piece and turning it into the shape we want the right piece to be on this side, but I'm also showing you how we can select multiple warp deformers at the same time, because this does work if you select multiple at the same time. So I have my big sort of eye stuff deformer. On the left side, I have my eye frame, which includes the lashes and the sclera, and then I have my eyeball angle XY deformer. So I'm going to select all of those. I'm going to, while they're selected, go to this top looking to the left keyframe. I'm going to Control-Shift-C. We go over to the reflected side. And now what we want to make sure we do is, instead of keeping the left eye stuff selected, we want to select the exact same, or the corresponding pieces that we have on the right side. I guess here is as good a place as any to note that this only really works if, for example, your eye stuff on each side is symmetrical as well. So you want to make sure that your warp deformers on each side are the same, because if they're different, it will not paste correctly. But anyway, so I have Control-Shift-C to this side for the left eye, and now we want the right eye, when she's looking to the right, to look the same as over there. So we now Control-Shift-V, and we can see that this menu pops up. Now, currently, all of these options are correct. If they weren't, we would be able to like drag, oh my gosh, that's so freaky. We would be able to drag these around. Oh, that's very interesting. What's happening right now? Anyway, we would be able to drag these around, make sure that everything is corresponding to the right thing. So if you've, titled your warp deformers correctly, it should be fairly easy to tell that, eyeL, you want to be the same as eyeR, so forth and so on. Adjust as necessary here. Live2D seems to be pretty smart about knowing what you're trying to do here, but, it's technology. So we press OK, and we can see that it is now the same. And we can do the same thing if we keep the right stuff selected on this side. We can then Control-Shift-C here, go back to this side, select the corresponding items on the left, and do the same thing. And now it looks the same as on this side. And so we can just sort of do that for everything that has, symmetry in that way. And just making sure that, you always have the right thing selected. You can also do this on the bottom. you know, because the bottom looks really freaky. But yeah, so see how that kind of works? It's just the general principle of the thing. Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of see how it works. That's really the basics. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and just rig the rest of her angle X and Y's up using this method. And then we'll fast forward and I'll show you another little use for this, which is gonna be reflecting the left and right side pieces. And we will be rigging the eyeR open and closed based on what I've done here without, you know, copying and pasting the whole left eye over to the right side. We're just going to be able to copy the movements that we made on the eyeL parameter and put them onto the eyeR parameter using this method. Hello. So we have fast forwarded through the rigging. She is now pretty much complete. I'm happy enough with this, or at least it's good enough for now. Now let us look at this method for the eye open, because I'm a person who finds it very annoying to, once I've done, for example, the rigging of an entire eye, I do sometimes find it annoying to copy the whole eye, you know, reflect it over to the other side, change all of the parameters that everything is rigged to, move it with a rotation deformer. And if none of that is sounding familiar to you, you have a different method to me and how I learned to do it. But you can reflect your shapes using the Paste Form Special tool. So I'll show you what I mean. I've rigged a very simple open and close animation for the eyeL open. So let's go ahead and select I have the lashes L and sclera L rigged. That's pretty much the only thing I rigged for this sample. We are going to select the eyeL open parameter. We have our meshes selected. We're going to go to the closed position, Control-Shift-C, and then we go to the other parameter, the eyeR open parameter. We select our lashes R and sclera R, go to the closed position, and Control-Shift-V. And then it does the same thing as the other side, which is very cool. I don't know if this is easier than the other method of just copying and pasting the whole eye. It might actually be might take a little more time. I don't know. I personally like this method, and I think it's just generally useful to know that you can do that. You know, for example, I feel like this is particularly useful if you know, even if you have rigged a whole eye, for example, flipped it over to the other side and, you know, just using the copy and paste method, but then maybe you want to change something on one eye and you're like, oh God, I don't want to have to, you know, do that whole rigmarole again. You can just copy and paste those changes over using the Paste Form Special, and that might make it faster or more expedient in some way. I definitely have found it to make things a lot easier for me, so maybe it'll make something easier for you. So now I want to get into the weeds a little bit with just a little bit of troubleshooting and showing you something that can happen if you don't have flip the front and back side checked. This is important to know, I think, for the theory of it all, and, you know, also other reasons. So, okay, so we have our face deformer selected for this bottom and looking to the left angle. I'm going to show you what happens if you don't have flip the front and back side checked. And we're just going to see what happens. Surely it won't be scary at all. Surely it'll be fine. See what that does? Yeah, it's pretty freaky. You get a whole flat Stanley situation, and I don't really understand what exactly flip the front and back side does. You can kinda infer what it does, but we just don't want it to be like that. So that's why you have to make sure that you are checking that box, because otherwise it's just gonna be too scary for anyone to even look at. I realized there was one more thing I wanted to tell you, and that is about art meshes. And so mostly we have so far looked at this method using warp deformers. But I want to look at art meshes for just a sec because I promised you earlier that I was going to tell you about something weird that can happen with art meshes. And actually, we sort of already saw it. So you may have noticed that in the art mesh section of the paste form special window, down where we have vertices info and invert coordinates and all of our symmetry settings, you may notice that unlike the warp deformer settings, there is not an option to flip the front and back side, which is unfortunate because we kind of do need that for some things. Now, what's interesting is that when you're rigging art meshes, you can use this method on the on left and right versions of the same art mesh. So the example that I'm going to use is the nose pieces, because sometimes I rig the nose on the art mesh. I shouldn't, but I sometimes do. So if we go over to this corner, we can select the nose side and nostril art meshes. We're going to use the same method of Control-Shift-C, go over here and then select these two and Control-Shift-V. And you can see now I've kind of messed up how she looks, but this is just for the principle of the thing. But you can kind of see that, it worked. It sort of moved where the nose pieces were. And we can do that again with this side and putting it over here. It works basically the same as it does when we're working with warp deformers. But the thing with art meshes is that when you're working with a single piece, for example, this nose shine, it is going to do the flat Stanley turning a page thing that happens if we are working on art mesh, because for art meshes, for whatever reason I don't fully understand, there is no flip the front and back side option for the art meshes. So you can rig using paste form special left and right pieces directly to the art mesh, but if you have a single symmetrical piece, use a warp deformer instead. And hopefully you already are, but just in case you have some super low level in your hierarchy pieces at for example, like the nose shine, you want to make sure that you're not doing that. All right, I think that is everything I wanted to cover in this tutorial. I hope that something here helped you, but if you have any trouble, any troubleshooting, or if you have any questions about anything that you saw here that didn't make sense, or if I forgot something, please let me know. I have not made a tutorial before, so this is my first one. And if you did find this helpful and you want to support me, I do have a Ko-fi linked in the description below, or you can visit my VGen to check out my commissions, but you don't have to. But yeah, hit me up. All right. I'll see you later. Have a good one and happy rigging.